भाई 10 टाइम।
और भैया इसमें कितना? और भैया पता है मेरे एक भैया है, उनके पास N70 में 20 HP में। कौन सा?
चार्ज है ही नहीं। वो जो है ना उसको इसी में बंद रखते हैं। आई जस्ट ओपन व्हेन इट इज़ रिक्वायर्ड और खींचा बंद करा, पूरा टाइम लगाया नहीं।
बैटरी फुल है सर,
दिखाएगा फुल बट इट इज़ नॉट
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first of the boys' events of the 62nd inter-Martiniere meet, the boys' school debate. At the very outset, allow me to say how pleased and delighted we are to have Mr. Terence Ireland and Mrs. Ireland with us this evening. We are very grateful that he has accepted our invitation to preside over this debate as our chief guest, because I know that he has several other meetings to attend, and yet he has spare time for Le Martiniere. He is an old boy of Le Martiniere, Lucknow, and during my invitation extended to him, I did say, you'll probably feel a little homesick when you come here. So welcome, sir. Thank you very much for being with us this evening. I'm also very grateful that we have in our midst Mr. Elton D'Souza, an old friend of Le Martiniere School, Le Martiniere for Boys, Kolkata. And if I know that he's just told me that he cringes when he is introduced in public, but allow me to say this, and I hope you will all join me in applauding one of the finest gentlemen I have ever come across, Mr. Elton D'Souza. We are awaiting the arrival of Mrs. Farida Abraham, principal of the Girls' College, Lucknow. But we do have Mrs. Peacock with us. Welcome, ma'am, to this debate. It's also my pleasure to welcome in our midst all our former principals, Mr. Olney, Mr. Flynn, and visiting principals who are with us this evening. It's indeed my pleasure also to welcome the moderator and the judges, who I am sure have an interesting but difficult task ahead of them this evening. On behalf of all of us here at Le Martiniere, let me say how pleased we are that you have consented to be with us this evening. A very warm welcome also to members of both the contingents and all our guests for this evening. Now, without further ado, allow me to introduce to you the moderator for this evening. The moderator for this evening is Mr. Michael Shane Calvert, an old boy of our school here in Kolkata. Mr. Calvert is at present the principal of National Gems Higher Secondary School here in Kolkata, having served a stint as headmaster at Dr. Graham's Homes in Kalimpong and as a young master at St. Paul's School, Darjeeling. One of the outstanding features, one of the reasons why we've been delighted and very proud to welcome Mr. Calvert as our moderator this evening is that he's not only an old boy, he was a foundationer when he was here in school and is a glowing example of what foundationers can do and achieve in life. Mr. Calvert, welcome, and I hand over the proceedings of this evening's debate to you.
I wasn't interested in debating, but because there were many others who were far better than I was. The first time I was invited to speak to the audience, to Le Martiniere boys and girls, was when I was invited as chief guest at the Founders' Day ceremony at the, I think 3 years ago. That is the first time, and today is the second time that I'm here on stage to speak to you as the moderator. And I remember telling your principal, Mr. Chakravarti, that when you invite somebody to speak for the first time, you take a very calculated risk. And when you invite him for a second time, you do so at your own risk. Thank you, sir, for inviting me. It is indeed a great pleasure. And without much ado, I'd like to go straight into the debating formalities. But before I call out the rules, I'd like to introduce to you our judges this evening, who are distinguished gentlemen, who have very important roles to perform, but who are here because of their love for debating and because of their respect for Le Martiniere. Our first judge is Mr. Raman, who since please put your hands together for our first judge, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Raman. Mr. Raman at the moment is the Deputy Director of Maximala Bhavan, and he also, the Maximala Bhavan at Kolkata, managing the cultural department. He's a keen debater, a freelance journalist, and a guest lecturer for mass communication at Jadavpur University. Mr. Raman, thank you so much for being here. And being represented, the boys representing this wonderful school in Lucknow is ABHISHEK Bajpai. ABHISHEK Bajpai, the debating captain. GAURAV, CHOPRA, CHOUDHARY, and AVIRAL, JAIN. I'm sure we can do better than that in applauding our young debaters all the way from Lucknow. And representing Le Martiniere for boys here at Calcutta, Rushil Gambhir, Abhilash Pahi, Siddhant Isar, and Srivardhan Agarwal. When was the last time that any of us debated? Was it today? Was it yesterday? Perhaps even last week? I'm sure many of you will probably respond to yourself by saying, never. If you did, you are wrong. Debating is a part of us. Everyone has debated at some point in time. And maybe we've debated more recently than we even know about it. Debating, as we know, is all around us. The television, the newspapers, and even in our own homes. As a society, we debate about almost everything, from tax reform, to mowing the lawns, to the price of vegetables. Debating is everywhere, and everyone can do it. And what's important about debating is that it is fun. It is exciting. It gives us an opportunity to meet new people and to interact with them and to understand the different ideas that are being expressed by different individuals. And most importantly, we have an opportunity to stand up and argue, not in the manner of fighting, but in the manner of expressing one's ideas and opinions, to express oneself in public in a very stimulating and a very organized way. And so in short, debating is basically a battle of wits. And that's what we're all here for, to express our point of view. And that's exactly what we will be doing. When I say we, I mean our debaters who are seated right up here on the stage. The topic for this evening that's going to be discussed and debated upon, as we all know, is right up here on the board. It says, mankind is swiftly progressing towards the end. The question is,
21st September 2003. The front page of the Herald Tribune stated, 20,000 people perish as killer heat wave sweeps towards Europe. 10th August 2007. The headlines of the Telegraph newspaper read, worst in 300 years forces millions of people to evacuate Rajasthan. 25th August 2007, 3 days back. The breaking news in BBC was 50 people die as the worst forest fires in 15 years ravages the southern Greece. Ladies and gentlemen, events are fast overpowering us and mankind lies on the ground. He is bleeding from too many places and a band-aid cannot cure his wound. Respected Chairperson, members of the House, honorable judges and my most worthy opponents. The motion placed before this very august House today reads, mankind is swiftly progressing towards the end. And I, being a member of the proposition, shall prove to you how valid today's motion is. At the very outset of my speech, let me define the key terms and phrases that constitute today's motion. Firstly, the word mankind refers to the human species as a whole. It symbolizes not only our physical existence, but also those values of humanity which separates mankind from all other animals. Secondly, swiftly means fast or rapidly. Thirdly, the word progressive means to move towards or to proceed. And lastly, we come to the phrase the end, which simply means the cessation of an action, state or situation. Ladies and gentlemen, the end refers to a point where something ceases to exist. Now, if we take the motion as a full sentence, mankind is swiftly progressing towards the end. The end cannot be something such as trivial as the end of terrorism or the end of religion or the end of, let's say, AIDS. It simply refers to the end of mankind. Let me make one thing very clear at the beginning of my speech, that nowhere in today's motion does it mention that we have reached the end. Let me repeat that, ladies and gentlemen, we have not reached the end. All that the motion says is that we are progressing towards the end. By analyzing the current threats that mankind faces in the world today, we, the proposition, shall prove to you conclusively how true today's motion is. The first man was born into a world which was plagued with many problems. He had difficulty in procuring food, in fighting wild animals, and in protecting himself against the hazards of nature. So, when he met someone who faced the same difficulty, the two of them decided to unite and fight these problems together. Thus, prehistoric man formed the first tribe, whose individual members worked collectively towards the sustenance of the group as a whole. This point signified the end of man and the birth of mankind. Back then, we lived in small groups where everyone knew each other and where our loyalty was towards the group. In that case, universal betterment took precedence over personal achievement. The ability to work as a team not only helped man survive as an individual, but it also empowered him to achieve unknown heights, ladies and gentlemen. It allowed him to fulfill the impossible. It allowed him to surpass the unsurpassable. But today, that situation is drastically different. Our existence today is characterized by greed, selfishness and treachery. Ladies and gentlemen, we will go to any extent to ensure that our lives are problem-free, even if that means causing problems to others. Earlier, a race was won by ensuring that an athlete performed his best. Today, the very same race is won by ensuring that all his competitors perform the worst. This selfish and destructive attitude is indeed breaking up the social bonds between individuals. And the fact remains that in today's world, where individualism takes a center stage, collective goal takes a back seat. Where competition is rife, collaboration is seen unnatural. Where it's every man for himself, mankind itself is sinking. And we are fast moving towards a point where there will exist only men, but not mankind. There are many facets of our existence which extend beyond our physical being. The human qualities of love, sympathy, compassion and truthfulness make man unique in the animal kingdom. Today we are swiftly moving towards the end of all these values that represent mankind. Now let me give you a small incident to illustrate this point of mine. In the 1960s, 19-year-old Kitty Genovese was attacked, raped and murdered for 45 minutes. During which 38 people witnessed the crime, but not a single one raised a finger to help. Psychologists were baffled by the situation, and they came to the conclusion that when man was in a group, he assumed a smaller share of the responsibility, expecting the others to help. Thus, they came to the conclusion that in case of an emergency, the more number of bystanders there are, the less likely it is that any one of them will actually help. The consequences of this bystander's effect are prevalent in our world today. For instance, global warming has given rise to a host of other problems, such as food shortages, such as the outbreak of flash floods and wild forest fires. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these devastating effects can be analyzed by a very simple procedure. In today's world, mankind is only concerned about himself. Mankind only thinks about himself, and that is why he does not come together to tackle these problems as a whole. Moreover, today's problems are more complex to solve, more interconnected, more global and more menacing than ever. And yet, countries refuse to cut their emissions. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, we still live our daily lives ignoring this cry of dismiss, ladies and gentlemen, which nature is giving out to us. We are behaving like bystanders, silently witnessing the brutal destruction of our environment and eventually of mankind. My second speaker shall expand on the bystander's effect, and my third speaker shall highlight the disunity within mankind and the man-made problems which threaten us today. In conclusion, only a tiny fraction of the Earth's inhabitants see themselves as citizens of the planet, and then the citizens of their respective countries. Only a small fraction of the Earth's inhabitants care about people outside their immediate families. Only a handful of people seek to analyze the effect of their lives on the current generations. Ladies and gentlemen, when a torch is shined in a pitch dark room, it only emphasizes the surrounding darkness. And the fact remains that today, this darkness is engulfing mankind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ABHISHEK BAJPAI. That is an excellent beginning to what proposes to be a wonderful evening. And now I'd like to request all of you to welcome our next speaker, who will speak against the motion, ABHISHEK BAJPAI of MARTINIERE, LUCKNOW.
Homo sapiens came into existence almost 50,000 years ago. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, human beings have inhabited this planet for 50,000 years. Do you think that the human race will cease to exist in the very near future, and that human beings are heading towards extinction, and that too at a swift pace? Our pessimistic opponents seem to think so. They not only think so, but they believe it too. And during the course of this debate, they will strain every nerve and sinew to prove that what they propose is true and inevitable, and that mankind is doomed. They will try to convince us that no power on earth can save mankind from complete and total extinction in the very near future. There is abundant evidence which proves that our opponents are wrong. Even if they strongly believe that mankind is swiftly progressing towards the end, there is no evidence to justify their view. However, we will prove to you by genuine and concrete examples that nothing of this sort is going to happen, and that human beings will be alive and kicking for many thousands of years to come. My opponents may come up and talk about nuclear weapons and the looming threat of a major nuclear war which might cause immense destruction. They might come up and predict a mammoth natural disaster which might lead mankind to an end. I would like to remind you that these are examples of just possibilities and threats. There is no certainty that something of this sort is going to happen. We are not here to talk about hypothetical situations. Moreover, natural disasters that have occurred in the past have only been able to affect a fraction of the human race. They have never been able to cause a major reduction in the human population on Earth. Now I would like to bring up the example of the technological and the medical advancements that have taken place over the past few years. These advancements have made our lives better. These advancements have made our lives easier. They have made our lives safer. They have decreased the human mortality rate immensely. Does this indicate that mankind is heading towards the end? The answer is an emphatic no. These and the future potential of science only indicate that mankind is advancing and increasing. It is definitely not progressing towards the end. Analyzing the motion, we find that a key word in the topic is swiftly. This word indicates that mankind is heading towards extinction at a great speed. If that is true, then the end should occur in the near future. That could mean tomorrow or maybe in a week. Perhaps our opponents would like to tell us just how long is implied by swiftly. For all present here would like to know, so that we could breathe a sigh of relief after the gloomy picture of imminent doom painted by the opening speaker of the proposition. Ladies and gentlemen, there has to be a decline in some aspect of the human race which might lead us to an end. However, as of now, we only see progress and advancement. Then how can my opponent say that mankind is heading towards the end? According to the dictionary, the word end refers to the conclusion or death, and in reference to the topic, it means extinction. Let me now tell you that the number of human beings on earth is far greater than the number of any single species of animals. This just indicates that how abundant human beings are and how great a force will be required to put an end to them. Currently, we are not aware of any such force. The existence of such a force is only hypothetical. Then how can my opponent say that mankind is swiftly progressing towards the end? Let us now talk about the medical developments that have taken place in the past years. Today, the number of births per day far exceeds the number of deaths. Polio, a disease which crippled children in India and elsewhere, is very much under control now, and smallpox, which caused many deaths, has been completely eradicated. This just indicates that mankind is progressing and multiplying, and yet our opponents insist that mankind is progressing towards the end. Global warming is an issue that concerns all of us. I would like to tell you that global warming can just lead to increased temperatures to which human beings will eventually adapt. We all are aware of the capability of the human body to adapt to diverse conditions and climatic changes. Did not human beings manage to survive the sub-zero temperatures of the last ice age? This just indicates that global warming, although a threat, it cannot actually bring about the extinction of the human race. My opponents might come up and talk about diseases such as cancer and AIDS, which might lead to mass deaths. To counter this point, I would like to tell you that cancer could be cured if a person is reasonably aware and if the disease is detected early. As far as AIDS is concerned, the number of HIV positive people in India has reduced to half of the original number today. To conclude, I would just like to tell you that my opponents have spoken like prophets of doom and sound somewhat similar to Nostradamus and others before him, who so convincingly predicted the end of the world. But as false as those predictions were, so completely false will the assumptions of our opponents turn out to be. For all present here would totally agree with our view that nothing of this sort is going to happen. My opponents have tried their best to alarm us of the looming threats, but I would like to tell you that the proposition has dwelt upon many misconceptions and apprehensions. I agree that the threats they have pointed out do exist, but they do not have the required potential to put an end to mankind. These threats are not all-pervading, and they cannot annihilate the entire human race. Thank you.
Of MARTINIERE, Calcutta, to present his points of view.
April 2003, the Zaghawa and other tribes of Western Sudan rebelled against the government because of its lack of concern for hundreds of Sudanese tribals dying every day due to starvation and heat strokes. June 2003, the Sudanese government hires the Arab militia called the Janjaweed to carry out an ethnic cleansing scourge and genocide against the helpless tribals, against its own citizens. The Janjaweed are amply armed and the legalized massacre begins. 28th August 2007, time 6:45 p.m. The number of deaths in Darfur, Sudan has crossed 2.5 million. And even now, the so-called superpowers, China, Russia, and the United States of America have done nothing about it. Reason? Because China, Russia, and Uncle Sam import petroleum from Sudan. And in today's world, they will not do anything unless it directly affects them. If they stand up against the Sudanese government, their internal revenue falls. After all, a few million human lives lost here and there is nothing greater than a few million US dollars, is it? And my opponents are saying that mankind is progressing towards the end. They're not. Let's get straight to the point, ladies and gentlemen. Man is not merely an animal of flesh and bone. What characterizes man and sets him apart from other primates is his humane nature, his sense of compassion towards society, a high degree of emotional understanding, and his inherent capability of working in a coherent group has provided man with a way of life in which he has had control over all his problems. But in today's fast-paced world, man's quest for exponential progress has backfired. In today's world, familiarity breeds contempt. Kindness is seen as weakness, and man has become so desensitized that he sees his personal gain in front of the collective goal. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, when man's basic characteristics are deteriorating, when man's basic fundamental concepts are depleting, in today's world when man behaves as an animal who does not actually act to save the world but acts as a bystander, is mankind not moving towards the end? Ladies and gentlemen, we are swiftly progressing towards the end. And swiftly does not mean a day or two. It means swiftly in relation to man's history, in relation to the earth's history. They have said that scientific progress binds us together. But I ask you, do human beings around the world use the scientific progress of the development of the world as a whole? Or do they make nuclear warheads to only benefit their country, to only benefit themselves? The answer is clear. In conclusion, I say, ladies and gentlemen, I am not an anarchist. Even I want to live, even I want my children and grandchildren to live in a pristine world. A true world which is devoid of pollution, which is devoid of terrorism. A world which is filled with happiness and compassion. But I am a realist. Man has abused his privileges far too long, too often without caring about the consequences. And now is payback time. Welcome, my ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, respected chairperson. Welcome, my opponents, to Initio et Consummatum, the beginning of the end.
Of man. Now let's hear what GAURAV Chopra of LUCKNOW.
According to the proposition, mankind is doomed and is moving towards its extinction at breakneck speed. Humans are going to be completely wiped off from the face of this planet. What an unrealistic and impractical thought that is. My opponents are merely assuming, and their arguments are absolutely hypothetical. If we talk about possibilities, maybe in a decade or two, considering the rapid technological advancements, even on the Earth, mankind may be living on the moon too. Thus, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to prove here is that there is a vast difference between something that may happen and something that will happen or is sure to happen. I fail to understand that in an age in which we humans are progressing in each and every sphere of life, what makes them take such a pessimistic view? It appears as if they feel that the fate of mankind will be the same as that of the dinosaurs. The principal speaker of the proposition began his speech by quoting that in Europe, 20,000 people died because of heat waves. Well, let me remind you that the total population of Europe is 6 billion. Look at the difference. Still, moreover, I would like to remind him the theory of adaptability. I ask him that don't people survive in the Thar and Sahara deserts? They do. Let us now critically analyze the topic. The key words in the topic are mankind, swiftly progressing, and end. Mankind is a term used collectively for all the living human inhabitants of the earth. The phrase swiftly progressing refers to the rapid advancements or developments in order to achieve our set goals. Swiftly, although being a relative term, cannot be mistaken to describe a slow process. It definitely refers to a quick one. And lastly, the word end, which here refers to mankind's extinction. Thus, what my pessimistic opponents are trying to prove is that nearly 1 trillion humans are on the verge of extinction. This is almost laughable. history repeatedly bears testimony to the fact that mankind has survived the most adverse and challenging circumstances. Whether it be the ice ages or a mass epidemic like the plague, mankind has always been successful in overcoming such calamities and has never been threatened by complete extinction. In the last 2 centuries, there has been a tremendous development and advancement in the field of medical science and technology. The average life expectancy has shot up. Even in a country like India, which is a developing nation, it was only 31.4 years at the time of independence, whereas today it is a booming 64.7 years. The maternal and infant mortality